So unlike the previous session, this one is going to be probably experience sharing and more like you can consider this is a support group meeting, meaning that you are my supporter. So you are going to see how ugly I end up. Well, not really so bad, but to some degree, we see some obstacles and challenges along the way. But we're still trying, and looks like the initial results are very good. So moving along, first I have a question for everybody here. So does everybody know what CLIL means? Okay, so I don't have to go to the details. So this is actually the intention, just like Professor Cui mentioned. What we are trying to do is to build up our undergraduate students' English abilities, because we realize that if we try to do that starting from the graduate level, it doesn't work very well. I mean, they kind of abandoned their English for 4 years, and you want them to pick them back up at the same time while learning their professional fields. It's really difficult for them, and that's also my first-hand experience. So what we are trying to do here is to start from the undergraduate level, and meaning that we start doing that in the freshman year. So this is the class I'm teaching at freshman year. So the outline of my sharing is, first of all, I'm going to run through the CLIL pretty quickly because I'm not so sure if everybody is familiar with that. But we are going to go through this very quickly. And then I'm going to tell you more about the backgrounds about our department and the students here, and also the professors in the department. And also, how do we implement the program, and probably more from my own experience. And we have some assessments. I'm going to show you the ugly truth. Okay, so our own assessments, the university assessment, and some of my conclusions. Okay, so CLIL, you know that it's something we try to do while learning the content. We try to have the student to learn the language itself at the same time. So that's the essence of it. And here I put in another bullet saying that people do not learn languages and use them, but we learn them while using them. I think I believe this thinking, so that's why I put it here. And the other thing I would like to mention is that I was taught not to put more than 25 words in one bullet in PowerPoint, and which apparently this one violated that, but you have to be, you have to bear with that. So, because I want to quote the whole sentence, but the key part is we want to teach the students the language and the contents together. And 4 C's, whenever people mention CLIL, we know this very well. Contents, of course, this is the most important part. Communication, probably this is a more general expression for a language itself. So these are the 2 parts that we focus on. I'm seeing that throughout the sessions from yesterday and today. And the other 2 parts I found it more complicated and more difficult is cognition. And this is not like understanding the content, but this is like understanding the culture and what they are thinking. For those people who are using them. For example, I realized that there are professors teaching Japanese here in this room. And well, if you want to teach that, you have to think like that. And similarly, teaching English, I suppose, is the same thing here. And this I found it kind of difficult for an engineering professor like me to do. Okay. And culture, well, this is probably the most difficult part. But I guess we want to go to the case itself. Okay. So background about my department. This is a huge department. Well, not as large as some of the EE department, but relatively large for comparing to many science, social science departments. We have 56 full-time faculty members. And students, well, we have in total more than 1,000 students in our department. We have 3 classes for each year, like each one of them we have 60-ish students, okay, a little bit more than 60 students for each class. And master's program we have slightly more than 160 per year. And these are not including the international students. There are probably another 30 or so-ish international students per year. So fairly large department, okay? And type of courses that we offered in English. The first one, of course, is the general English class that we offered in the freshman year, sophomore years. Okay, and some graduate level courses and being taught as part of the international programs for, of course, students mainly coming from Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam. Most of them are like those. And some of them are from Mid-America, okay, but not that much. And these students, they are, I would say, the Asian students are not very good at English either. Okay, it's more or less like the local students. Okay, and the American students, I mean, from Central America regions, their English are fairly well, but for some reason they are not as focused in the content. So kind of very interesting distribution. Okay, oh, I'm sorry. So we have one special 补习班. I always like to use this word. I think most of you know that. I learned this from an English, I think American English teacher here in Taiwan. They said, so I asked him, what did you teach? He said, 补习班. I said, 补习班? Oh, you know Chinese very well. I said, no, well, no, I can spell that for you. This is how it's spelled. 补习班. Yeah, kind of like Bussy Band, but 补习班, that's what he says. So we have a 补习班 in our department, and because about probably 3 years back, we realized that through interaction with our alumni in the industry, they always gave us feedbacks on our graduates. Their English abilities are continuously dropping over the years. So they are getting worse and worse and worse. And actually, one alumni works in the motor industry. Okay, I don't want to give specific names. He mentioned that we have one graduate students, or new masters, went to their company for job interview, and then they asked him to give an English, a very brief self-introduction in English, and he couldn't do it at all. And then they told him that, well, you are not hired because your English is not good enough. And this guy started crying in front of them. And he was really shocked. He was really shocked. So we realized that now we have to do something to make up. So we started running, we have some money donated by our alumni and to start Bushiban. We asked some foreigner teachers to, just like standard Bushiban, talk to them and help them in their writings. Probably once per week. Attendance is very well. I think for me it's kind of like this kind of class, right? Did you pay money for this class? Yes. So do you want to come again? I suppose the class is not finished, so you should nod your head like, oh yes, for sure. Yeah, it's free for them. So well, it's very popular. We have like probably 40 students in the Bushiban. I mean, we have like 6 different classes running at the same time. So about 40 students in total. And this is running throughout the years. So one session after another, so it's very popular among the students. Okay. So, and this is, the last one is the one that Professor Cui was talking about, the EMI program that we started 2 years back. So in this program, we picked the 48 required credit courses in our department. And this is, again, in the undergrad program. And for those 48 credits, we taught in English. So everything in the class is 100% English. So we try to do it like that. And the thinking is like I mentioned at the beginning, we want to boost their English capability. So hopefully, when they reach the graduate level, they are ready for the international program. Okay, maybe going abroad or in our own department, so that we don't have to worry about our local students are not catching up in the graduate level courses. So that's the main thinking of having something like this. Okay. So we are focusing on the last one here. So English proficiency. Again, this is background information. Okay. Because it's in NCKU is in the southern part of Taiwan, so the general English capabilities of the students are not as good as the ones in the north. Okay, and students from the engineering departments, actually they are even less proficient in their English. So I can give you a number. I think our average TOEIC scores for our freshmen are around, in the whole university, I believe it's close to 800. Okay? Yeah, it's pretty good, right? And our department is more like lesser than 700, close to 700. So that's a big drop. Okay? And this is mostly, in the engineering college, that's the case. Okay, our English is just not as good as some other colleges. So that's one problem. And of course, everybody know, I believe this is the same trend running in every school, I guess. Okay, as they move along, they use English less and less, and then they are getting worse. They are getting worse and worse in English, and this trend is going all the way to our PhD program. Okay. So I was saying something in our PhD or doctoral program. entrance exam, at one time, there was one question for the students was, can you say 星期一到星期天 in English? Okay, the student couldn't say that. So that's how they are in English nowadays. Okay, so just you see a lot of this. Okay, so the trend is not going in the right direction, and of course, writing skill is not good. And I always use the example, punctuation. I don't know. I mean, in your case, I always see a mix of Chinese punctuations and English punctuations, like commas. Okay, sometimes they don't put it at the bottom. They have it in the middle, and then they have a period, Chinese period sign at the end of a sentence. And they don't use quote, double quote signs. They use those L brackets, in English. They do that all the time. So, and of course, that's not only in English. In Chinese, they have the same problem too. So, not really doing well at all. So that's the ugly truth. Okay. And more importantly, because they are not really good in English, so they are looking at this issue very negatively. Okay, so for example, I asked my one of my PhD students, I told him that, well, you should polish your English so that I can send you to US or other countries for presenting in front of the international researchers. Well, he couldn't do it. And once I sent it over, I sent him to one English-speaking seminars in Taipei, and he did very poorly. And then he was saying that at the end he was so frustrated. He said that, well, I'm in this department at Cheng-Kung because my English is not good enough. Otherwise, maybe I'm already in Taida. Okay, so sometimes it's frustrating for them and frustrating for us. So confidence issue is a big problem. And well, I guess the biggest issue is motivation. Yesterday I heard Chris was talking about motivating the students, or the Malaysian students had motivation issues in learning the content. I think we have the same issue here. The students are not as interested in the science or physics itself. They are more interested in the diploma, so that they can go to TSMC and work for them. So that's the issue that we're facing here. And opinions towards the CLIL. Of course, most of them are positive. So most of the professors look at it as a good thing. They say, well, we should build up our English capabilities, and we should do that through content teaching. So everybody agrees with that and the benefit of CLIL. Okay, and some of us are more willing than the others to deal with the bumps. I know I was assigned to do this. One big reason is because I'm one of the junior professors in the department, and the senior professors always say that, well, I'm 2 years from retiring, I'm too old, I'm useless. You guys have a bright future, you should do it. Okay, but joking aside, I mean, I think some of you may have the same experience as I. So, well, it's not as easy to to ask senior faculties to do this kind of work. And so mostly this kind of job would just drop onto the junior faculties. So we get to do that. But of course, I understand the benefit of teaching English for myself and for the students. So I'm willing to do it. Okay. And of course, some of us are not as positive as I am. So we have many professors saying that, well, teaching English, I mean, it's not my native language. And so I probably, when I teach, I can only teach at 70% efficiency compared teaching in Chinese. And then the students, they are not good in English, so they probably can get another 50%. So 0.7 by 0.5, wow. That's probably, for students, they can get probably 1/3 of the content. So they are really worried about it. So that's a general, some of the professors, they look at the CLIL program this way. And of course, the number one issue or many complaints were that we don't have native English speaking professors. So how can we teach in English properly? Okay, so that's some of the concerns. And of course, only suitable for the brightest students, like for example, in the medical department. Oh, they are so bright. they don't need you to teach. They will learn. So it doesn't matter what you teach. So some of them think that way. And of course, the biggest concern is always greater workload for the professors. Okay, and of course that's true. I mean, but if we want to do a good job, that's what we have to go through. Okay, so I'm moving along to talk about my implementation. So about the course and myself, the students, and the class itself. Okay, the core subject here we're talking about is first class into the mechanical engineering, and actually this is also one of the fundamental class in the civil engineering department too. So this is called statics. Okay, not statistics. Okay, so different. Okay, so it's not misspelled. Okay, so statics basically deals with structures that standing in steel. So they are not moving like motorcycles or cars or airplanes. So some structures, that's what we're interested in, like this one here. So this is the first semester class, okay, so in the freshman year. And the good thing about this class, which is kind of easier for the freshmen to adopt, is it's a very similar subject when you compare that to the high school physics. Okay, so it's relatively easy from my point of view, and we do a lot of mathematics. So this is very typical in the engineering classes. So I know that there are probably 20% of the audience are from engineering related departments. So we teach a lot of mathematics in the courses. Okay, and this is what I was mentioned. We apply this for studying many structures and machines. Okay, and before I started teaching in English, I had taught this course 6 times before. So it's not like I'm stepping into a new class and also I have to do it in English. I already know the content very well. That's what I want to emphasize. So I know that the students may hit a bump somewhere along the way. So I know that where I should slow down for the students. So that's sometimes it's kind of important to know that in advance while you bring the course up in English. Okay. So if you are doing both at the same time, well, that's even more challenging for sure. Okay. So again, just like Professor Joe was talking about course objectives, that's of course very important at the very beginning. So you need to know your audience. Of course, in my case, my audience, I know, because no one would take this course. But the freshman students, and the one flunked the course at the first time. So I know the students very well. So it's kind of like, okay, I know what I want them to learn, and then and the additional objectives I like to have. So of course, the most important thing, after all, is the content itself. Okay, if they couldn't comprehend the content, there's no point they speak good English. Okay, they should be in the English department, not the mechanical engineering department. Okay, and now of course, in addition, we try to build up their listening, oral, writing, reading skills in English, and another objective I have is I want them to use the internet resources as much as possible. I don't know if you've shared the same experience or not. In our department, I always find, even for the graduate students, I always found the students, when they start looking for informations, they only look in the resources from Taiwan, from China. Why? Because of the language. They don't like to read like what Harvard business report and then stuff like that. No. The simple reason is that they don't want to touch anything in English. So they are so familiar with Chinese, so they just stick to the Taiwan or China resources, and this is a big problem for them nowadays. I want them to feel comfortable using English, okay, and looking up things in the English web pages. Okay, about myself, a brief introduction. Of course, I was educated in Taiwan through college, so 16 years from pre-K or from kindergarten through college, and completed my graduate study in the U.S. And after that, I worked as a research engineer in the company for another 6 years. And actually, many of my experiences related to language and culture are actually through that time. I mean, for example, because I have to interact with peoples from different countries, mainly from India. Okay, so and I have to get to know their English. Like for example, there was always this guy ask me, "Do you know the dime?" Dime? Okay, so someone knows time. Okay, they like to pronounce it T with a very strong voice. I don't know how to say that. Okay, then they say, "Do you have time?" I said, "What?" "How many do you want?" 10? Okay, I have $1. So something like that. Okay, and then I get to lead a team from coming from different countries, like from a lot of them from India. from for example, Philippines, and of course Americans, and very interestingly, not so much from Taiwan or China. Okay, maybe because of the department I was in. And I get to give company-wide training courses to the mostly sales and technical support people. And these are mostly Americans. So I know that, well, I can teach in English. They kind of understand my broken down English well enough. They can comprehend what I'm saying. So I kind of build up my confidence through that time. And the very interesting part is I get to expose to different culture, like the Indian ones I was talking about. And of course, when you start talking about culture, I think for my experience is I get to see different peoples through their religions. Okay, so because there are many Muslims, Buddhists, and of course different Christians like Presbyterians, the Baptist, and Methodist, and then I get to kind of slowly understand what they believe in, and then start discussing their religions, and then I slowly get to their culture a little bit better. But then it takes a lot of time to get to that point. So that's why I'm saying that I'm not so sure if we could get to the cognition and culture part of the CLIL 4 C's. Okay? And another observation that I have during that time is because while I was working in the US, we have a branch. Branch is more than an office. It's a branch in Taiwan. And I get to know some engineers and managers from Taiwan. And I realized that, well, you don't have to be an expert in engineering to get promoted. The most important thing is you communicate well with your colleagues or co-workers in the US. Then they get to trust you, and then you get a very good compensation and promotion quickly. So I saw that, well, some of them, they are really good technical-wise, but they just couldn't communicate well enough in English. For example, my colleagues in the US always ask, well, could you please do this for me? And the answer on email coming from Taiwan says, no, I cannot. That's his answer. So, well, you know that when I say, could you please, that means you have to do it. But then my colleagues in Taiwan, they thought, well, these guys are really polite, so probably it's not that important. so that, oh, no, I cannot, I have to do something more important. Well, but that's, again, the language barrier for me. That's how I look at it. So, okay, this is another more than 25-word sentence. So, another bad example. But then again, I like to quote it. Okay, so, of course, I believe that I don't have to be really good at my grammar. I don't have to be really good at my pronunciation. I can share my knowledge with my students. I think my students can do the same thing with me. Why? Because the infants, they couldn't say anything, but when they are hungry, they get fed, right? So no problem in communicating. Okay, there are, you know, if you're willing to try, then we'll get somewhere. Okay, so my experience, again, not formally trained apparently, and I lectured the graduate level course for 2 years. Well, I'm still lecturing this course in 2 years. After the 2 years, I was lecturing in English. But what I found out is that I felt miserable. I mean, the students couldn't understand me at all. They don't understand because, well, if you look at it, what the heck is viscoelasticity? So again, this is probably a TOEFL word. So what is that? It's kind of like something like your cheese, how chewy it is, or how sticky it is. So something related to viscoelasticity. So the content itself is not that easy to comprehend. And the mathematics behind it is awful. And the students are not really into learning. And I'm lecturing in English. That's a really bad combination. So we failed very bad. And so I decided, no, I cannot do it anymore. So we switched back to teaching in Chinese. Okay, even though I had done that before in the U.S. In the U.S. students didn't have any problem with the way I teach. So can be my teaching, I think. So must be the students, or the combination of me and the students. Okay. So that's the problem. So okay. That's my experience. And coming back to the freshman students in this course we are discussing, these are new freshmen in college, very shy. I think you all notice that the students they don't like to talk. And in particularly the engineering school students, they tend to be really quiet or very soft-spoken. Sometimes it's a good virtue, right? Speak very softly. Oh, I asked him, what do you think about this? I'm not so sure. I said, what? Well, so I passed them microphones. So it sounds like, it started like, and it becomes, can you tell the difference? No. Well, that's a problem. And again, the other thing is the program itself is voluntary. So it's not like they have to do a test and they have to be at certain level so they can enter the program. No, it's voluntary. So their proficiencies are very, at a very wide range. So that's another challenge for us. Their general English is okay, but they lack training in science and technology. For example, how do you say 3/5 in English? 3/5, or like 3/5, right? So you always say the numerator first, okay? But it's just a different way of thinking. Or for example, I asked them, should I flunk you, or should I fail you? You're doing so bad in your grade. They say, no. Or they say, yes. I said, what do you mean yes? He said, no. What do you mean by no? Okay, I got confused. Okay, so this is this is the difference in our in Chinese language and the English way of thinking. So we get confused all the time. Okay, so that's a problem. Okay, the class itself, what I do is really not very different from when I taught in Chinese. Okay, we use PowerPoint as a visual aid. The reason is that there are some graphs or pictures it takes forever to draw on Blackboard, so I have to use PowerPoint. But otherwise, I like to still use chalk, writing on the Blackboard. Why is that? Because if I just flip through PowerPoint slides, it gets so quick and then it's all equations. These are not like some photos or diagrams you saw yesterday, like Professor Lu shows. I mean, it's all equations. And then our attention span towards equations are very short. I mean, and after probably 2-3 minutes, if you couldn't follow the equations, then you just zoom out, go somewhere else. So in my case, I like to use chalk and write slowly so that for them have time to think about it. Okay, so that's what I do. And so I do example problems on Blackboard and then derive equations. And I like to group them into small teams because, again, because they are shy, so in this small group, hopefully there's always some person is more brave and would like to stand up and say something, representing the small group. And slowly, they are more opened up. So that's what I found out. So even though this is an engineering class, I still like to group them into small groups. But please do not group your engineering students into large groups. Otherwise, I mean, some of them, they will just sit there and then do nothing. Okay, because we have like 60 students in our class. So if you group into like 10 groups, then even that, it's 6 students is a little bit too much for us. And we do that for in-class works and after-class assignments. So in the class, it's really not very different from what we did before. So we have, again, always 4 to 5 questions to the students during my lecture. Otherwise, I don't want to keep asking questions. This is not a case learning, okay? So I'm still lecturing. So I just want to make sure that when you reach a key point, you want them to follow you. So that it kind of serves as a temporary stop, and then help them, have the time to comprehend what you're trying to tell them. And okay, I always have some concept quiz. The answer to the quiz is really simple. It's always, I told them that. I always told them, well, if you don't know the answer is 0. Okay, so many times I gave them questions, looks very complicated, but the answer is really simple. So for that kind of questions, probably I like to give them once every 2 weeks or so, or maybe more frequent. And we always have questions raised by students during the class. So it's good. I mean, and of course, this does not happen at the beginning, and it's always probably getting to after a third of the quarter. A third of the semester. Then they get to feel comfortable about the class, and then they started asking questions. Okay, and after probably 1 year or so, I realized that, well, the way I teach is not really different from before. It's about the same. Okay. Challenges. This is what I was saying earlier. For example, they are not very good in their technical English. For example, the other photo is better, so I don't know if you can see the other side. Okay, on the left-hand side, you saw a hand, something like that. What do you call that thing? Yes, people know it here, but not in our class. A wrench. It's on in the middle of the wrench. What is that? A nut. A nut. Yes. Okay. So there's a bolt, and it's actually a nut. It's not very clear, but it's a nut. And then this whole thing is a pipe, and on the side we call that the flange. So the student had trouble expressing in English. Of course, even in Chinese they had trouble. I said, okay, what's that in Chinese? 扳手, right? I guess some of the professors don't know either, if you don't work on machines. Okay, but these are mechanical engineering students. What about bicycles? So, well, Well, you ride a bicycle sometime in your life, or at least you saw one. So what do you call the thing here? This guy here? Yes, saddle. So it's not a seat, right? So what about this one here? The wheel. Okay, a wheel composed of what? Spoke. What else? Spoke is these things, the radial-ish looking things. And what? Tire, right? Tire is part of a wheel, and we call this thing a ring. Okay, and in the middle there's a hub. Okay, so that composed, the wheel consists of all those things. But the students couldn't, say anything about it. What about this thing in the back, the 齿轮? Okay, see, you are translating Chinese now. Yeah, I mean, the problem is the Chinese and the English, they don't match. It's called cassette. Just like when I was young, we had this tape, right? The cassette tape. Okay, it's the same thing. Okay, and of course we call this crankset, handlebar, and disc brake, caliper, and all that. Now the students couldn't. When you say it, the ring, they said, what the heck is that? Okay, that's a problem for them. And then, of course, equations. Okay, these are mathematics. Well, you say, oh, no. But then for them, it should be straightforward, right? Well, can you say that in English? It's not that difficult, right? Vector f equals to f times vector. And what is this thing? Lambda, right? So now they have problem with Greek syllabus too. So alpha, beta, gamma, delta. Well, you have to learn all that again. These guys, they have trouble with all that. So that's something in my experience you have to somehow teach them at the beginning. So nowadays, when I started the EMI course, for the first week, I taught them in Chinese. Okay, I realized that, no, I can, before, when I first started it, I go straight forward into English whenever I step on the podium. So from that time on, it's all English until the end of the semester. And I forced the students to use English too. But I realized that they have trouble speaking all this technical, not really technical, but English used in this to describe some structures, machines, or even mathematics. Okay, they have trouble with that. So I have to kind of do a small 补习班 for them to get them ready. And then I start going to the real content. Otherwise, they have a lot of trouble. Okay, so and again, the other challenge is motivation. Really, that I don't have a good answer for it. Okay, I try a few things, but if you would be willing to share your experience, like somehow you can motivate them, I'm all ears. Okay, I did a lot of things, but none of them worked for them. Okay, the size of the class is too huge for me. Even though this morning we heard about 60, 70, 80, or yesterday 180. Wow, I don't even know how to handle something like that. Okay, more than 50 is difficult already for me. And the other problem is the students are not they are not used to learn by reading the textbooks. Okay, they spend more than 1,000 NT by the textbooks. And then they just flipped to the example problems. They work on the example problems and work on the homework problems. That's it. And majority of the textbook is the main paragraphs that they don't read at all. They say, well, all I care is equations and then techniques to solve the problems. Why do I bother with the text? But that's what we're trying to build them up with. So that's an issue for them. So again, I would like to say I'm not formally trained, so I'm doing experiments. It's mostly grassroots efforts. So, like I said, I don't have to be good in English, in pronunciation, in grammar to teach. The students does not have to be good in English to learn. So I always give this as my example at the first English spoken class. So what it says, this is the Newton's laws of motion. I think everybody here knows that, right? Newton's laws of motion. 牛顿运动定律. You learned that in middle school, right? Okay, so this is actually the article that these laws first appeared, book by Newton. And what's the title of the book? Philosophiae Naturalis Principia. Oh, no, there's another. Mathematica. What the heck? Of course, in the 1600s, the common language is Latin. Okay? So Newton at that time, even though he's in England, or he has to write in Latin to publish. So he's doing foreign languages. So it's not easy for them either. And then for me, the students say, oh yeah, sure, you spent, 12 years in the US. Of course, your English is better than us. So I started reading this Newton's first law, which is basically the essence of our course, the statics. Okay, so I'm going to do that again. See how bad I did. Lex E, corpus omne perseverare in statu suo, quiescendi vel movendi, uniformiter in directum nisi, quotidius viribus impressis, cogitus statum illum mutare. Something like that. Thank you. So that get my students excited. They said, wow, look at him, he's making a fool of himself. Well, some of you know that I'm reading very badly, but that's what I'm trying to show the students, okay? Well, I'm not very good at reading it. That doesn't stop me from learning, from using it. Oh, and I think someday I'll be becoming very good at it if I try hard enough. So just to show an example, of course, then I start giving them the English translations. So which is not important here, but what I'm trying to say is, well, show them that I can embarrass myself, no problem. I don't care. Okay. Even though I'm a professor, which is supposed to be really, I'm a confident, I'm really good, I'm better than all of you. Well, that's not necessarily the case. I'm just showing the students that, well, I'm just like everyone in the audience, and I'm willing to learn. Okay, so coming to the tools that we use. So I know many of you have been using the digital or web-based electronic tools for teaching. For example, we use a lot of online resources, videos and stuff like that. And then, of course, we use for keeping grades or all the lecturing materials. We use, a lot of the schools are using Moodle, okay? And I'm not using Moodle for this class. I'm using something called, you cannot read this. It's called Edmodo, E-D-M-O-D-O. Probably some of you heard of it before and used it before. I use this over Moodle for a simple reason, because this thing is probably more natural for the students. Why? It's like Facebook. Okay, Facebook, all the students are so familiar with Facebook. So it's kind of like a social network page. So it's not Moodle. Moodle is kind of, sometimes it could be intimidating for the students. They say, wow, a lot of very complicated ways to get to what it needs to do. And it's kind of intimidating. And this one is just like Facebook. It works just like Facebook, so they like it. And then it also accepts many files formats, so they like it. And of course, probably some of you are using, for example, Google Classrooms, or Google Classroom, I think. It's also something relatively new, and I think it's all very helpful in distributing all the notes and then collecting the homework and announcing things. And something I like about this is it works just like Facebook. You announce something, it has an instant messenger kind of feature. So the students cannot say, "Oh, I didn't get the notice." So you ask them to hand in homeworks. They have to, they know that. Well, I know that they get it. And Moodles, sometimes if they leave a university email address, they say, "Well, I don't check the email address all the time. I don't check my email all the time, so I didn't receive your notice." But this one, it just forces you to get the message. So for the homeworks, it's very convenient. Okay, not so good is it's not supported by the university. Basically, this is just like Facebook and commercial company. Okay, so no university support. You are on your own. So all the technical issues that you have to that you face, you have to try to figure it out by yourself or work with the company. Okay, and sometimes it's childish, to be honest, because it's actually originally developed for the K schools, okay, the compulsory schools, okay. So the homework assignments I'm doing very similar, or actually no, I'm using what I did in Chinese classes as a reference. Very standard. So I have selected problems from textbook, and I don't ask them to submit their written homeworks, but instead I take small quiz exams based on the homework problems. And at the end of the semester, I have probably 14 of these quizzes. And in the English class, I have to change, okay, because that doesn't work because they don't have the chance to practice their English, okay. So instead, I started ask them to read and write summaries of the textbook on the key phrases, okay? And that's one part. The other, and of course, that's try to force them to learn in English, okay? And the other one is try to identify difficult problems. So they're in the engineering textbooks, you always find like 100 example or homework problems at the end of each chapter. And I just ask them, well, work as a group, pick the most difficult problems that you think. And you don't have to solve it. So what I try to do is force them to read a lot. So the intention is force them to read the textbook as much as possible. So not just focusing on solving the problem itself, but read more, okay? And then of course I have some problems around the students. For example, assignments, okay? typically put assignments on at Moodle and ask them to explain things. Okay, so they just write a short paragraph in English, of course, to explain those key phrases. Like, for example, we use equilibrium quite a lot. So what does it mean? Okay, and then in addition to write small paragraphs, I asked them to record their short paragraphs in English. Okay, speak out and record it by using their cell phones, and then record the small and submit the MP3 files onto the social network page. So I can grade them on the social network page. So in addition to force them to write, and now I force them to read also, read out loud, of course. Okay. So and the other thing is, as long as they submit their MP3 files, I give them very high grades, just to encourage them to speak more. So you don't have to be, very good in your pronunciation, or even right in your grammar. But I want you to, get comfortable using it. Okay. So then we also have studied real-world problems. So not just the problems in the textbooks. Well, these are not as interesting. And then the select difficult problems, like I mentioned. And then at the end of it, of course, I want each group exchange the difficult problems that they selected with the other group, and then ask the other group to solve them. Okay. So, and if you get them to work as a team, that's another important thing I'm trying to implement. So that if your difficult problems were solved by the other team, they get credits. And if they couldn't solve it, then you get credits. Okay? So that's, somehow ask them to work as a team to try to compete with the other groups. Okay, and then of course I get to ask the students many questions at Moodle, just like Facebook. You can communicate through Facebook. Ask them questions, and sometimes they ask me questions. Some of them are, again, like I said, very shy. They don't want to raise their hand and speak out loud in class. So at least they can write, and I don't care about their grammar and so on and so forth. So they write very poor English, doesn't matter. Ask your question and I'll answer it for you. So again, just build up their English while learning the content. Okay, so we also have tools on learning progress. For example, all these features are built into the page. So I asked them, well, how well are you? Do you understand the content? Well, 10%, 30%, 80%, 100%, stuff like that. And then I made a pool, and then if it's not doing well, then I just slow down a little bit. Or sometimes they say it's too easy, then no, just move along a lot faster. And then talking about stick and carrots. Okay, there's a small carrot here for the students. Okay, so they have this badge feature. So if you did well in some homework or in class, and I'll give them a badge. Okay, a small sticker. Of course, not real small sticker, but sticker on this thing. And if you collect like 3 stickers, you don't have to write one homework, but you get perfect grade. So that's a small carrot for them, and they like that. So try to skip homeworks. That works. Okay. So we also have team projects, and I'm not going to go into details, but again, the intention is to build teamwork atmosphere for them. Okay, so exams is pretty much the same as the Chinese course. Okay, two midterm and 1 final exams, 3 exams, and compared to the Chinese classes, the test frequency is about the same, similar depths of questions. And in addition to those, I included concept questions. I asked them to explain things, just like in homeworks. So I have to follow these things because we have 3 classes, and I'm only teaching 1 class in English. And the other 2 classes are taught in Chinese. So, and at the end of this semester, we want to make sure we cover pretty much the same content. So I really cannot, slow down on this part, on the test part. So they are not. It's not like, okay, I'm teaching in English, so I'm letting it loose a little bit. No, not really. Okay. So assessments. That's the part I was talking about, the ugly truths. Okay, so I want to share with you what we have learned to this point. So that includes the grades the students are receiving. We always have this university course evaluation that they ask the students to fill out at the end of the semester. So I included that. And in addition to that, I worked with Professor Cui on some survey form, developed it specifically for the EMI. And also my own experience. Okay, so the first thing here is these are from 2006 through last year or this year. No, actually last year. Okay, so these are the students, number of students in the class. Okay, they're pretty much the same. Last year it gets a little bit less. Why? Because I have too many homework problems in my class. So we have like 30 homeworks in total for the semester. So probably about 2 homeworks, roughly 2 homeworks for each week. We don't have homework during the midterm exam week, but pretty much 2 homeworks each week. And on top of that, we have this project and exams and all that stuff. The students found it a little bit too much for them. So other than the freshman students, some of the more senior students, they when they retake the course, they choose the other classes. So kind of nice for me. I like a smaller class, even though 55 is still a little bit too much for me. But the numbers of students failed the class, it's pretty much the same throughout the years, not a big variation. And average scores I'm giving them, well, it's about, again, pretty much the same. Between, there's not really a difference between the years I taught in Chinese and the years I taught in English. So even though I worried quite a bit, but in the end, well, not very different. So they are not that bad. Okay? And the university evaluation, well, of course I normalize everything. Try not to embarrass myself. So, but you can see that, well, it's about the same again. Not very different. And actually, if anything, is more on the higher end. The average score is actually slightly higher than like last year. It was pretty much getting to the highest point I got, and then the first year wasn't so bad either. So, well, the students know that I'm teaching in English, and probably it's not as easy for them. But then they didn't really complain that much. Okay. And we did all the self-conducted survey, and then these are the observations that we have. It's too much, but the most important part I would say is, of course, they recognize the importance of EMI, but more importantly, I think what I have is here. They improved English listening ability after a semester of listening to my broken English. They think they are getting better. And they also have improved their reading ability, which is also important. Try to build up their reading ability and then, get comfortable with the second year, the sophomore year, more complicated, more difficult content. And they also would recommend the course to freshman students next year. So, they think it's a good thing. So that's nice. And, well, not so positive, okay, or it's more like in a positive nature scale. These are like, let me see, the most important part, or the more important part is they don't think their writing ability or speaking ability improved a lot. But, well, it's still on the positive side. And actually, what I'm feeling more troubled is the last one here. This is the lowest, received the lowest grade, is they would preview text before each lecture. So even though I'm forcing them to submit concept quiz, homework, sometimes before I lecture to that part, they just wouldn't do it, some of them. They say, well, I'm so busy in my other classes and my after school clubs and all that stuff. They just couldn't focus on the class. So that's kind of trouble for me. Okay, so but in general, it's good experience. The most important part is they understand the importance of this class, and they would recommend the class to next year's students. Okay, so, well, it started out not so good, but at the end, the survey or the evaluation, turns out okay, not bad at all. Okay, so my take from the survey that we did is the most important part, the content learning, is on par with previous Chinese classes. It's not reduced because of the teaching in English. Okay, and their proficiency is actually improving. Okay, I think Professor Cui had numbers for that. Our English proficiency for the class is actually improving. They did a GEPT test on the students before when they entered the program, and then at 1.5 year mark of the program, and the scores is improving. So indeed, their proficiencies are getting better, and that altered the trend that we saw that students are their English proficiency are like free falling before. So this is good for them. And they're kind of comfortable of using English now. It's not like before I passed them microphones, they were just like hot potatoes. Oh, give it to the guy next to you. Nobody wants to answer. But now they are okay. Okay. So that's a big difference. So on the content portion of it, my take is that we are not compromising the content learning because of the EMI implementation. And the thing I like is the students spend more time reading texts, books. So, and they are shifting from the previous, solving example problems, solving, the problems after each chapter, and move from that to reading the text itself. Which is very important because, the more advanced courses, the textbooks, they don't have that many example problems. Okay, then at that point, they don't have anything to practice on. They have to read the text, and which they don't want to do. So now I'm getting better, forcing them to do that. So what I'm thinking is, actually what I did already is now we changed our textbook to another one which has a very good online resource support. So this book basically they have many recorded short videos explaining the concepts. So, and of course these are recorded by American teachers. So they speak very good English. They have no problem at all. And then, so I like them to learn, other than my broken accent, I like them to learn from the real English accent or real American accent, so that they can, get better at their listening proficiency. And also, flipped classroom method. I'm still thinking, looking for good examples to start, but to be honest, this is a little bit hard for this kind of fundamental theory course. So, but I can see the benefit of doing that, but I'm still looking for good examples to start doing it. And well, problem-based learning similar to the flipped classroom method. I also have another class in the graduate level. It's called fracture mechanics, 破坏力学. So it's kind of like diagnosis different problems. So not on patients, but on structures, machines, and all that stuff. So that are more suited for the problem-based learning. But for this kind of course, probably not. I have to stick with the traditional lecture approach. Okay, so good things about language learning, they are more proactive. Okay, more proactive. And then this is what I really like. They now feel more comfortable searching for references in the English environment, not in Chinese anymore. Okay, so the other good thing I like is I also enforce the class starting on time policy. But slightly different from Professor Zhou's requirement, I didn't ask the student to be there on time. Because if you know Cheng-Kung University, we have classes, they may have classes in another campus. And then the class break is only 10 minutes. And if the other, the previous instructor, if he didn't finish his class on time, and then the student had to rush to my class, they might be in risk of getting into a traffic accident, which is going to be a big trouble for me. So I said, well, take your time, be safe, that's the most important thing. But I told them that I will start on time, even there's no student at all in the classroom. But that never happened. Okay, that never happened. Okay, so, and then because I'm starting on time, so they and actually something else is like, I always start on time, but before, when I see, well, they are probably only 1/3 of the students are in the class. So I start talking jokes, making fun of some things until the, seats are more populated and I get started. But I realized that the students understand, if the students know that you are just, grinding out times and waiting for them to come, they will just, take their time and then slowly moving in. So I said, well, I will get started. And then if you couldn't make it, well, it's your problem. I don't care. Okay, so I just started on time, and then now they will come in as soon as they could. And the other thing is, I don't allow them to eat breakfast in class, because my class is typically probably the first or second class in the morning. So a lot of students, the first, they would go to the 7-Eleven to get the breakfast and then come in and then start having a breakfast show. just like they're eating breakfast and then looking at the monkey dancing on the podium, something like that. No, I cannot stand it anymore. So, okay, no breakfast. If you want to drink something, that's okay, but I don't allow them to bring breakfast into the classroom. Okay, so that also helped quite a bit. Okay, so now I have to treat them like small kids to make it work. Okay, the other thing I didn't mention, but actually it's in the slides earlier, is in our department we have a native English speaking lecturer, and he's teaching another first year class alongside my class. So it kind of like helped the students see that a native speaker and a self-trained or second English using as a second language speaker. So they get to see our different accents and so on and so forth, which is not bad. It helped us quite a bit. Okay, and then it helped the students establish their self-confidence. Okay, they say, well, I can understand not the Taiwanese English only, but also the real English. So that helped quite a bit in building up their confidence. Okay, so improvements we have. The English usage is still limited in the class. Okay, and they will come to my office and ask questions in English. I force them to, but then just for the class. But other than that, they are still not that into talking more English. So well, there are something that we can make it better probably, and we need extra efforts, to make the student focus on the class, because speaking English is really, again, for them it's slightly more difficult to follow. So I like to speak jokes, but sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. For example, we have for example, I like to tell them that, well, we have a phrase called moment of a couple. So I always tell them that, well, the couple is having a moment. So what does that mean? The couple is having a moment. Of what? Okay, so for us, couple means, in the statics phrase, okay, couple means two forces acting in the opposite direction. And they are equal in magnitude, but they are not on the same line. A moment is a torque, if you know torque. Okay, so that's the torque from those two forces. So that's the couple is having a moment. Sounded very different from the way I say it, right? So the student couldn't comprehend it. So I thought that was a joke, but no one laughed. See, that's the problem. Okay, and the classroom layout, we have narrow but long classrooms, and then populated fully with the chairs and tables. And there's no way to arrange them into desirable, like this one here, surrounding the lecturer. So it's kind of annoying, and there are people way in the back. They couldn't hear me. I don't think they could. So, and the other thing I like to complain is readiness of mainly the teaching assistants. We don't get it's always hit and miss. So sometimes we get good graduate students, they serve the TA well, but sometimes we don't. And you have to train them every time, because it's always, master students work as a TA. Okay, so summary, I asked myself, well, is starting this in the college level a gimmick? Well, I think it's not. We are doing pretty well, and we get positive feedbacks. And of course, we need more data to collect, to evaluate the program. So the last thing is, what about the other two C's that we are trying to accomplish? Cognition and culture? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, for me, it took me probably during the 7th or 8th year in US, I start to enjoy all the stand-up shows and the late-night talk shows in the US. Before that, I was looking at it. What's so funny about these guys? I don't know. I don't understand it. I only enjoy goofy comedies, like Friends. Okay, people acting really goofy, and then I know that it's funny. But then some other jokes like I know you must know Jerry Seinfeld, right? I couldn't understand the humor at all at the beginning. It took me many years to understand it. So I'm not so sure how we could help us, only doing the EMI in our ME courses could do this. Probably we need a more comprehensive course to really get this working. Okay, so that part I don't know. So for that I think I'm running out of time. So that would be the end of my presentation. Okay, so yeah, this is it. That's the end of my presentation. So I'm not sure if I have time for answering any questions at all. Oh, I think we do. But I don't know if you have any questions for me, or you have answers for me. That would be even better.
It's a question. You mentioned that you have one quiz every week, 10 minutes.
That was in the Chinese course. But when I moved to the English course, I didn't do that anymore. So the quiz is more like a 3-minute quiz. Very simple concept questions. Just, the answer is always one word only. So very, very, very straightforward. So not in the English class. Right. Sorry.
When did you give up that test in English class?
I found doing those quiz tests, like solving engineering problems, it takes a lot of time. And then some students, they get it done very quickly. And then they start doze off. They don't know what to do. They just sit there and wait for some of the others. They are really slow. So I don't think it's a very efficient approach when I try to lecture to the many things I'm trying to cover. So I gave up on doing that. So instead, I just going back to the old style of ask them to write more homework in after the class, and which they cover the content very well. So just want to save more time for in-class interaction.
So it was about 30 homeworks per
Right.
semester, and then 2 midterm examination, 1 final.
Right. Right. And also a project.
Compared to the Chinese courses, how much more effort do you put?
A lot. I would say probably 40 to 50% more effort, because and that's considering I'm very familiar with the subject already. So I just need to many times I'm trying to find out what would be the best way, the easiest English that I could use to help them to understand the content, the subject itself. That's where I spend the most time.
It seems like this course, the statistics is required
No. The short answer is no, right. Because, well, actually the other elective course I'm teaching, because some of the students are not from this class. So we have a mixture of the Chinese class students and the English class students. And I guess the effort is too much to try to build them up from that point on. So I think the easiest way for us is to, get the foundation done and get all the small bugs filtered out at the very bottom, and then and so when they get to the more advanced elective courses, we don't have to worry about all these things anymore. So that's why we didn't do it in the elective course, which is still doable but more challenging, I would say. Yes.
Do you read the homework or TA read the homework?
Okay. Two types of homeworks like we have. One is the classical or typical solving problems. It's more equations, deriving equations, solving equations. Those things that TA do it. But then you saw a lot of explaining things, writing short paragraphs, and speaking out, and recording. Those type of homeworks, I graded them myself because that's the other part. I don't trust the TA, so that's why it's more involving for me too. Yes, we are.
Okay.